Hello, welcome to this week's economy. I'm your host, Dr. Vance Ginn. I'm recording this on August 18, 2023. I'm so happy that you've joined me here today. Remember, you can find all the show notes at vanceginn.substack.com or go to my website, vanceginn.com. Easy enough, plenty of links there and other information, and you can even find the podcast there. Please share it with your friends and family. I would greatly appreciate it. I've got some big things to talk about, so I really want to get right into it here today. Don't miss this week's Let People Prosper show, though, with Nick Horton of Opportunity Arkansas on sound policy in Arkansas, but they could also apply in many other states and a lot of the great things that they're doing there. Great conversation I had with him. And next week's Let People Prosper show will be with Dr. Matt Mitchell of the Fraser Institute about economic freedom, his work on Poland and socialism and communism, and a lot of other things. So please don't miss that episode as well. So here are the big things going on this week. And most recently, on the national side, we have interest rates are reaching a multi-decade highs for mortgages of over 7%, 7.09% now, the highest in more than 20 years. So you really got to go back to the early 2000s to really see this sort of level of interest rates, which is having an influence on the housing market. There's a good report article in the Wall Street Journal that talks about what's happening across many cities, many states. This is a good one with rates now. So this is quote, with rates now much higher and workers returning to their offices, some of the hottest areas are now cooling off faster than the rest of the country. Median home prices in Austin, Texas, near where I live, dropped 19% in the second quarter from a year earlier, and in San Francisco fell 11%, according to the National Association of Realtors. And so a big part of this, right, is that you're really looking at larger and larger payments on a monthly basis with interest rates soaring. In fact, whenever you look at it from just over a year ago, when interest rates were closer to 3 or 4%, now they're up to 7%. That's going to more than double in many cases your monthly payment. And so think about how much you're paying now for your mortgage. Think about paying double that. Would you even be able to afford your house today? I might be able to, but it would be tough, right? It would be a lot tighter in my budget. But this is what people are facing today. And also rent prices keep going up. And so I know there's a lot of talk about, well, rental and housing prices and everything else are going to keep going down. And I think that would be the case. But we also got to think about the imputed prices. The actual rent that people are paying are not really going down because they're locked into those contracts for a while. Now, maybe interest rates go down. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But then you could refinance. But it also means that, look, if you have a contract for a couple of years ago now, like I do, you're set in a lower interest rate. So your rates, your prices, your rental imputed price isn't going up at a rapid rate. So that's not going to change, but it also is not going down either. So these are all going to have some influence on inflationary pressures moving forward and on the housing market. And even if you look at the 10-year note rates, it's at the highest that it has been since 2007. So we're looking at 16 years for 10-year note rates, and those rates usually are tied to mortgage rates, car loan rates, and other things. And as we know, the Federal Reserve has also raised its Fed funds rate, overnight lending rate between banks, from 0 just a year and a half ago to 5.5% now. I think they may even raise it closer to 6% by the end of this year. So look for interest rates to continue to go up. But what's interesting so far is looking at the Atlanta Fed's GDP now, which is basically just an estimate that they use of different variables that are coming in on a monthly basis. And then they update their projections of what the current quarter is, because we won't know the Q3, which we're currently in, for a couple of months from now. So this gives us an idea of a running estimate of what's happening over time. And they're actually showing for Q3 as of August 16th of 5.8% in Q3. That would be a robust increase in real GDP, seasonally adjusted annual rate. The blue chip consensus, so when you look at the private sector, they have it closer to about 1.8% right now. So that's a big gap between the two. And the Atlanta Fed's GDP now estimate, it went from about 3.5% to 5.8% now, just since July 27th. So there's a lot of data that they're saying that things are improving. Unfortunately, though, that's not what everybody's feeling along the way. So I'm hopeful that that will be the case. But as I'll talk about in a little bit about the state employment report, it shows a lot of weakness out there. The labor market's also showing weakness, and you look at the United States. And so we've got some other indicators out there that I think we should make sure that we keep track of to not get overestimated by some of these high projections that are out there, but really look at the facts and underneath the hood from just those underlying factors. There's another good thing that I want to talk about today about how the left wants nearly $2 trillion more in spending, as some argue that President Biden and Congress hasn't spent enough. Are you serious? which would be on top of the trillions already spent in this new political subsidy economy. These were two articles that I first saw this on the Unleash Prosperity Hotline. It's Committee to Unleash Prosperity. If you're not getting their daily email, you might want to sign up for that. I think it's some good information that comes out. Steve Moore and others put this together. It's got some good information here, but it links to an article that was put out by the levernews.com, which is, I was looking about it. I hadn't heard of it before. So the guy who runs the Lever helped Senator Bernie Sanders whenever he was running for president. So it's kind of a leftist group overall that's putting out information. But it says Bidenomics, this is August 15, 2023 article, Bidenomics isn't working for working people. Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while. But as I would say as well, they've had too much increase in government spending and taxes and regulation. And this has put a burden on working class people. They come at it from the argument that says, well, look, people are having a lot of financial hardship. If you look at it from 2020, percent of Americans having difficulty paying their expenses was 32%. Now it's 39.2%. From 2020, percent of Americans experiencing food insecurity went from 10.5% to 11.3%. These shares are going in the wrong direction. Even after spending all this money and quote unquote stimulus and everything else, people are doing worse off after all this. I mean, it's something else. And then they come through and say, well, it's because the U.S. is shrinking its social safety nets. You had all these pandemic related issues that came up where they came in and they had an eviction ban for a while and extended the unemployment insurance coverage. They added unemployment benefits. They had a foreclosure ban, the child tax credit expansion, free school meals, Medicaid expansion, student loan pause, all these different things. They have a great chart here, and I'll put all these links in the show notes page. But all those are starting to expire by basically the end of 2023. A lot of those expired, a couple years ago. But the Medicaid expansion and emergency food aid expired earlier this year, and so in the student loan pause, right, is supposed to end in October. It's coming up here pretty quick. This is going to leave even less money in people's pockets. And so I think what this group is really trying to push more, we're going to hear more of this from the socialists, from the Democrats, from the progressives, is that we need to expand these things and really increase it even more. And their last point here is most of Biden's social agenda never materialized. Their Build Back Better, they're saying, well, look, there was about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, or the Inflation Acceleration Act, dropped $1.7 trillion of the funding in the Build Back Better Act. So instead of having a $2 trillion package, they would have liked it to be closer to $4 trillion, which I've written about this, how it had been ridiculous, and it would lead to a lot of other problems. And we're seeing a lot of those costs today. And a lot of this, the Wall Street Journal had an opinion piece called Bidenomics and the New Political Subsidy Economy. Talks a lot about what happened in the Inflation Reduction Act with Medicaid. There's a lot of issues that are happening right now that are going on. And when you have this much dependency, you're going to lead to worse economic outcomes in the process. And that's really what we're seeing. So the next thing I want to talk about was a state level jobs report released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics today and shows a mixed bag across the country with weakness in many states starting to develop. And so it says that unemployment rates were lower in July in 7 states, higher in 3 states, and stable in 40 states. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today. 23 states had jobless rate decreases from a year earlier, so the unemployment rate's going down. 5 states in the District of Columbia had increases, and 2 states had little changes. Non-farm payroll employment increased in 4 states and was essentially unchanged in 46 states in the District of Columbia. But when you look underneath the surface on this, which we always should, yes, you do have the unemployment rates looking very low. New Hampshire has the lowest in the nation at 1.7%, Maryland at 1.8%, Vermont's also at 1.8%, South Dakota 1.9%. When you look at Florida, 2.7%. You have Oklahoma 2.7%, Tennessee at 3.1%, Louisiana, where I do a lot of work at the Pelican Institute, 3.4%. So they rank 33rd, I guess highest unemployment rate in the nation. Arizona 3.6%. Texas at 4.1%, California 4.6%. It's been increasing at a pretty rapid rate here recently. And then Nevada has the highest in the nation at 5.3%. But you also have to look at what's going on there, right? The labor force participation rates are declining in many areas or haven't come back, and that's kept the unemployment rates lower than they otherwise would be. But you also have to look at the percent changes. And this is what was really concerning to me. So month over month, you had the highest percent change increase in Vermont of 0.9%. Florida was third at 0.5%. Texas was right up there in the top 10 at 0.2%. California, 0.2%. But what was really interesting, though, was that there are 10 states that had a decline year over year in percent terms. And if you look at basically 0% growth down to negative growth was 22 states. So nearly half the states are not growing at all in their employment and non-farm employment, or they're actually declining. Louisiana, again, declined by 3,000 jobs in the month of July. This is all for the month of July, or a decline of 0.2%. So not a good situation there in Louisiana. Delaware lost the most as a percentage of negative 0.6%. And so we do have some states that are having some problems when it comes to the labor force, which we're also seeing in the national reports as well. And if you look over the year-over-year percent changes, the only state that has a decline so far, I think this is going to become even more here soon, is Rhode Island at negative 1.1%, as they've lost 5,600 jobs. Mississippi is at 0.3%. They're the second lowest at 3,200 jobs have been added. Louisiana has increased by 1.6%, 30,000 new jobs over the last 12 months. So not a robust factor there. If you look at the ones that have increased the most, is Nevada, 3.8%, 56,000 jobs. Texas, number 2 at 3.3% at 441,000 jobs. And Florida at the number 3.2% at 300,000 jobs that have been added. California is only at 2%. They've added 363,000 jobs. But again, Texas led the way over the last year pretty substantially, not only in, when you think about percent change terms, but also in total number. And so I think that's something else to really look at. In other news, though, China's economy is slipping along with their currency, the yuan. And this was an article in the Wall Street Journal. China's economic woes are pushing its currency toward a record low. And I think this is something we're going to continue to see there, as there's a lot of strife in their economy as they were shut down for so long. It's been tough to come back on. The U.S. economy is weakening as well. And so that is less exports, fewer exports that are also going, less exports that go in that direction as well in dollar terms. And so a lot of these things are putting pressure on the Chinese yuan. And when you think about the higher interest rate in the United States, you'd rather have your dollars parked in the U.S. than in China, as their interest rates are lower there right now. As we've been bringing ours up to 5.5%, their 10-year rate is right around 2.7% is the latest I see here. Actually, right around 2.6%, and we're closer to 4%, a little over 4% when you think about the 10-year rate. So where would you rather have your money, in U.S. over China? And then that puts downward pressure on the yuan. So that's something else we want to look at, keep an eye on in China. And last but certainly not least, the U-bend of life is a piece that I was in The Economist. Again, they'll be in the show notes page. People tend to be happier from 18 to 21 years old and after age 46 on average. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of ups and downs of volatility and uncertainty in people's lives. And early on, you'll have as many worries. Later on, you do. And then even later on, your career is coming together, your kids maybe going off to school or college. There's a lot of other things going on. And so I think that it brings about some optimism that, yes, things may not be the best that they are over time, but put your faith in God, put your faith and really find a way to come together as a family, as friends, as community, not in isolation, but really come together. And I think that that'll help us to be better off as we move forward. I'm also putting some links to my recent work, as I've had an NTD News interview on skyrocketing costs for families, an Econ Lib op-ed, the best global tax reform is lower taxes. The Center Square op-ed, school is starting, but kids are being left behind in Texas. An AIER, American Institute for Economic Research op-ed, Fitch drops U.S. creditworthiness, spending is the reason. And then Pelican Institute, I have a couple pieces there, Louisiana Economic Report, August of 2023. So with all that, there's a lot going on. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And until next time, let people prosper.